Hi, welcome to this week's Fundraising Friday. This week we're talking about choosing your board chair. Too often boards wait till the very last minute and just kind of look around the room to see who's willing to serve as board chair. But this is a critically important position that determines the culture of the board and oftentimes the future of the organization. So you want to plan ahead and look very carefully at the qualities of your board members when choosing who's going to be chair. So what do you want to look for in a good board chair? First of all, it needs to be someone who has a deep passion and a knowledge of the organization and is willing to work very hard in order to assure its future success. You want somebody who's very dedicated to the organization because frankly, they're going to be putting in a lot of time. Speaking of which, second of all, you want someone who has the time to devote to the organization. While everyone on the board is giving time to the organization, I think board chairs or board chair elects underestimate the amount of time that it's going to take to truly do a good job. Make sure your board chair has a good idea of the time commitment and is willing to put in those kinds of hours for your organization. Third, your board chair needs to know how to deal with conflict effectively. If they are conflict averse, you're not going to have a very effective board. Your board needs to have a culture where they can talk openly and freely and disagree with each other respectfully and then be able to come to some kind of conclusion. The way that happens is by having a very strong board chair. Fourth, and relatedly, and this sounds very obvious, but you'd be surprised how many boards don't look at this, they need to be a good facilitator. It's your board chair who's going to be leading your board meetings. Can they lead an effective meeting? Do they know when to interject and when to be quiet? Do they know how to help everyone get involved in the conversation? Do they make sure it is conversation and not a monologue? Do they know how to have conflict and discussions? Do they know how to help the group come to a decision and what to do when there's dissension and how to help those people who are on the quote unquote losing end be okay with the decision that's made? And do they know how to delegate? Too often boards talk themselves to death, but you need a board chair who's willing to say, okay, we've made a decision to move forward this way. Who's going to take the lead to do A, B, C? And lastly, you need someone who's not afraid of interpersonal conflict, who the other board members respect. It's the board chair who manages the board members and the board relationships. So it's the board chair who needs to call someone who maybe isn't pulling his or her weight on the board to talk about their commitment, who maybe hasn't made a donation that year, or to mediate when there might be an interpersonal conflict between board members or between board members and staff. You need to make sure you have a board member who's ready, willing, and able to assume all of these different duties. When you do, you will find your board is much more effective. That's this week's Fundraising Friday tip. Thanks. Have a great weekend.